work session tonight is to kind of get in a little deeper on the some of the zoning text and the zoning map amendments. If anybody's got any questions, you know, our planning commission has spent 18 months or so and done an excellent job of putting this together for us. You know, I would just wanted everybody to have some time to think through it a little bit more and go over any questions. We got Mary here, Circle here from staff, so I think she can help us kind of get through some of these questions and concerns. So with that, the easiest way maybe just to be kind of start. We started, whoever wants to start, and then we can kind of pick a topic. I know there's some that are very been talked about a lot. You know, the short-term rental homestays. That's probably the biggest one that I've gotten some comments about. So you know, if that's the one, if there's others as we go through, but I mean that might be the one to kind of start with. And so currently, you know, we allow short-term rentals or homestays as they're being called in the new zoning text through a conditional use process, and that's what the planning commission has recommended, that we continue that process for the short-term rentals in the R1 designation. So I know there's been some questions and some thoughts about, do we want to have that in R1? And you know, I just wanted to see if there's any questions that we have for staff or our chance to talk amongst ourselves on how we feel on that issue. So anybody want to get started on that?
Well, I'll kick it off for discussion purposes. I don't personally see any problem with R1 districts. I mean, I know people who have those in the town in Bedford County and in other areas, and they are monitored very well. It's not like you have party goers or wild teenagers coming in there and spending the weekend. They're monitored by the occupant or the owner of the property. Of course, they don't want people coming in there and tearing their basement up or whatever they have, but I don't personally see a problem with the R1 areas. In fact, that's where probably a vast majority of them are in towns and cities. I think I've mentioned my oldest son's father-in-law has one in Bedford County over around Boonesboro. People from that come to football games at LU and different functions, they use it, come in on Friday or Saturday, spend 1 or 2 nights, and they've had zero problems there. It is a registrar they have to go through to get it registered, and it's online, so anyone who is interested in that can go online and view it. In fact, my oldest son and his family, that's generally what they look for when they go to vacations and different places for Airbnbs and so forth. But anyway, that's just a little comment to get it started.
Anybody else want?
Well, I have read so much stuff, and some of the information is just getting all jumbled up. I need some clarification. Right now, what are the guidelines for starting one of these?
Mary, do you want to maybe answer that question? You're talking about right now before we move to adopt the new changes.
Currently.
Okay. So Mary, maybe for just edification purposes, you know, talk about how we are, what it is right now, and then maybe some of the big changes that they proposed if you could.
So currently, short-term rentals are regulated as bed and breakfast with a conditional use permit in the residential districts, and generally are by right in commercial districts. So we just call it bed and breakfast. The biggest thing we regulate with that is off-street parking. And the definition of bed and breakfast also allows someone to serve dinner for up to 14 people on, pretty much a recurring basis. So there's some requirement for provision of food as breakfast, which could use some questions about, what is breakfast these days? Most people leave out a basket of food. It doesn't require health department approval. We're going through that process. So right now, it's conditional use permit in the R1 district as a bed and breakfast.
And then the new, so will there be some distinction with the new language between a bed and breakfast and a short term? I mean, they'll both still require conditional use permits, correct?
As this is drafted now for the new language, it will be a conditional use permit in R1, R2, R3, and then by right in the commercial districts. There are about 4 that it is permitted by right. Same process, just different wording. There are more regulations that are applied, very definitive ones that relate to extinguishers, carbon monoxide detectors, smoke detectors, safety, access, and exits. There's also a process for revoking a permit now. It's a 3-strike rule in a particular time frame where we would pull the permit. We can pretty much do that anyway with conditional use permit and then practice, but we just haven't because these haven't been an issue.
So it's a little more spelled out what would cause you to get your permit laws.
Very defined, yep, the
Right.
revocation process and an appeal process too, the penalties are very clear.
So on the need ways, the need outlines, will that eliminate, will that restrict certain time you stay there or something like that? Or you,
So the definition of short term is generally less than 30 days, and that's really why this becomes a thing, because long-term rentals aren't regulated. If someone has a tenant that stays on a month-to-month basis, they're just a tenant. I mean, they're just living there. There's no recurring change of occupancy, there's no traffic, it's just a totally different use. So there is a limit on the number of days. It specifies on a daily or weekly basis.
So it doesn't matter what business they use to rent it then? Because I know there are some of the Airbnb and some of them do over 30-day rentals at times.
So the mechanism of how it's rented is one thing. It's just the fact that if someone's no less than 30 days is what triggers the short term rental of the property.
And then the new language will require a registration, so we will have a list of who is supposed to.
And what determines how many people can be there at one time? I mean, is that based on how big a house you have?
It's generally based on occupancy of rooms, number of rooms.
Okay.
And see the maximum number of adult guests in a homestay unit is limited to 2 per bedroom.
Super good.
And that's again the adults.
So it's 2 per bedroom, 2 adults,
It's adults. Doesn't count children.
doesn't count children under,
That's a good question for me, is my interpretation would be an adult is 18, because the next section talks about the principal guest shall be at least 18 years of age, so generally I would just go for the full legal state definition of adult.
And right now, we know where the number of them are.
We do know where ones that have been permitted are, and where ones that have come into the new boundary adjustment area, we know of one that has a permit through Bedford County.
And Mary, you're more familiar with this than I. The register that they have to go in and register on, that can be viewed also.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It should all be in our report.
And so anybody, that's really how people find the Airbnbs. They can go in on this online register and look and see where they are in certain areas or wherever they're going to.
How many do we have currently?
I don't have an actual count since I did it, so I wouldn't trust my numbers. I'd say 85 that I'm aware of in residential and commercial districts.
Yeah, I pulled it up on the app, and I don't know which ones are residential, which ones are commercial on it, because they don't show the exact values. And I think it was 12 that popped up within the town limits when I was looking at it. And that's all of them, that's residential and business.
And ones that are permitted and not.
So-
So it just depends on what platform
Mhm.
you did your research.
Because I could look on VRBO as another
Yeah.
platform.
Yeah.
because if I recall, I believe only one has been approved through the conditional use process. Is that right? I think, if I remember, I know we turned one
One
down.
down in Westview.
And we approved the one on the Longwood end. But I can't recall if we've had any others that have actually in the R1 district gone through the conditional use.
I don't know any in my time here.
There were several that were approved in prior years.
Right.
Have we actually had any complaints about, from neighbors or anything? I mean, it seems to me like we're looking for a problem when we don't have one.
No, I have not had any complaints from people who have been affected by someone having an Airbnb or a short.
We can always, you know, if it becomes a problem, we can always change the rules, but.
I think the only concern has been ones we don't know about is where they're paying transient occupancy tax to, because we don't know where that's going. I did learn of one couple who had come in a couple of years ago, and we were in the process of figuring out where we wanted to go with this in the planning commission, and they had asked, they were coming in to pay their transient occupancy tax, and we couldn't permit them without a process to do that, so they were actually trying to be absolutely on board with that, and I don't know what process for you really to do unless you want to do it for better breakfast.
So on the new rule, is it anything different in the real estate towards the property owner? Do they have to pay any different taxes or anything like that?
They would fall under the transient tax, transient occupancy tax of 5% paid to the town.
And that gets extremely, pardon me, Mr. Haley, it gets extremely complicated with respect to how they pay that, whether they're renting it themselves on a short-term basis, whether they're going through a local realtor, whether they're going through Airbnb or VRBO or who, it varies how we actually collect, and in some cases, whether we actually manage to collect that tax, but in theory, it's 5% on everything that's said. I wanted to mention anything that you allow by right, any place where short-term rentals are by right, you can't necessarily get rid of them once they're there, because people who start off doing them by right, subsequently, they have a vested right to continue doing that unless they discontinue it for 2 years. So, creates there's something to always be concerned about when you're allowing something by right in a district.
Even if it was by conditional, right? Because
If it's by-
because the R1 right now is not by right. I mean, yeah, I don't think anybody's got any issues within the business district having the short-term rentals. The question is in the R1 neighborhoods. And so right now, they don't have it, they have it through a conditional right.
Yeah.
So is that the same thing?
Well, they would have to come to you and get the conditional use permit. I was merely saying that to encourage you to make sure at least keep that.
Yeah, right.
So that you don't wind up with people who are just out doing it and then claim they have the rest of it.
Right. So exactly, so I mean, that's the downside, if you restrict it in the R1 and say we're not gonna allow it at all, I mean, how many people are gonna still try to do that anyway, and we're not gonna know about it, and we're not gonna potentially get the transient occupancy tax from it. Whereas, at least with the conditional use permit, you know, they gotta come in. And then there's the other question, how we go back and kind of fix the ones, I mean, that's a different kind of question. That's really not the zoning text amendments. It's more to, that's a staff function that we'll figure out how to go back and get those people, like, especially the one in the boundary adjustment. I mean, they didn't know, you know, that there was, I mean, they were in business doing that before they came into the town, and, you know, so obviously we have to work with them to get them to come through the process and somehow and get that, you know, approval. If we decide we, you know, are still gonna go through with the conditional use part of it.
Now, as far as the conditional use guidelines go moving forward, if we see something that looks like it's becoming a problem, is there a way to curb the expansion of such enterprises? To curtail any problems?
So it would depend on what issue that you were seeing as becoming a recurring one, whether it's over, you know, parking incorrectly, or there's too many people in a unit, how we would, the thing is, so you can target that issue in the regulations, so going forward, those coming in would need to apply with that. And talk with town attorney about what happens retroactively to those who did receive a conditional use permit, but again, it's, I believe it's an annual registration with this, and they didn't get a conditional use permit, then we would be looking at that to make sure they aren't legal, and that they haven't had any enforcement action to take away the permit.
Wouldn't some of that though fall back on the property owner that is doing that? I mean,
Ultimately.
yeah.
Because if there's a violation, it's his violation.
It goes back to
Correct,
the owner.
Yes, it's not the people renting it, they're violating his terms.
Right.
But he's violating the conditional
Yes.
use.
Yeah, the host, it would go back to the host for any enforcement. Then again, revocation of a permit would be the last thing.
Is there a way you could limit how many are in the town? Or, because I don't know that you can, it just was a question.
I would think you could, but I don't know how you make it fair, who gets.
That's what I was gonna ask,
number.
yeah.
Well, and that's part of the concerns with it, is you get so many people, you get people that are coming in just now to buy real estate, just to do short-term rentals. And that's the downside that kind of having them, I guess, is you don't want to get into that situation. Obviously, you know, we're trying to promote ourselves as a tourist destination. You know, we got that new designation as a World War II heritage city. I mean, so tourism, I think, is going to continue to expand. But you know, we need people living here and being a part of the community too. So that, you know, that's, I guess, the other side of the coin. And I think that leads to Todd's question.
Yeah, is there a way to limit so many per each, like R1, you're allowed, we could have somebody within the town, in the R1 zone?
But like you said,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
the
possible.
first 10 guys gets it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Down,
if first come,
down,
first
you know,
served,
I
so we
mean,
can really do it.
And those will change too, as people drop out of the program, that would open a slot, say, pick random number 15, 20, then someone comes out of the program, it would open the slot, someone gets their permit revoked, it would open the slot, we could do that. But you bring up a good point about when short-term rentals become investment properties and they take them out of residents living in the community, it changes the dynamic of it.
Right.
But
And it
to what
also-
extent would that happen in the town, I don't know.
It also going to drive up the affordability of your other rental properties in town, you know, because, you know, the supply of that's going to maybe decrease, and now that's going to drive up rent so that's the situation you don't want to see yourself get in. I don't know if that's, like I said, probably no way to limit that, is there, Mike? I mean, really, I mean, you just know that that's one of the risks.
Not other than to limit the number. It's actually funny you bring that up, Mr. Mayor. Liz Zirkle and I were actually at a meeting in Virginia Housing not too long ago where that was one of the issues was localities where short-term rentals are by right, you find that it drives up the rents in those neighborhoods and creates homelessness issues.
Right.
So having it by, again, you might find a conditional use permit that sweet spot in the middle.
You know, I've stayed in a couple of bed and breakfasts when we were traveling. But the houses were big enough, the owners actually lived in the house also.
Yeah.
They actually stayed there, the house was big enough for them to rent out rooms, but that's not a requirement of having bed and breakfasts in there.
It's not explicit.
In other words, they can open a bed and breakfast and just rent it out, and there's no overseer there, have to be there.
It's not.
That's our, VRBO is one that they advertise that they only rent full houses. Airbnb, you can rent one room out of a house. And an Airbnb, you can rent just a bedroom and, you know.
So,
And there are some places, and this is a question for Mary, some places are doing just renting beds. Would this cover that also, if somebody just wanted to rent their bed out for the night? And that's happening, because I've read the ads about it.
Bedroom or bed?
No, just a bed.
This ordinance does not address
Really put that on the front porch. I mean, so was there any discussion about that, about whether it had to be, you rent the whole house, or do you rent?
The question was, it did come up about owner occupied or owner on the premises, is how do we regulate that? And as we do it now, it could always be a condition. It doesn't currently spell it out under bed and breakfast, but owner must be on premises, but it's assumed it's a bed and breakfast that they bar just by.
Right.
what it is historically. So, that'd be something to definitely consider. You can always condition it, but that provides a level of uncertainty to an applicant coming in, not knowing what you could impose. Where going up front, they would know, I'm not gonna buy this for a short-term rental if I have to live in it. And that's what some people are called right now, who do live in the county and happen to have property in town, and they want to offer that as this, but they don't live there, or don't live there yet. One couple does want to ultimately move into the house they have in town. But until they do that, sometimes this is a placeholder for transition.
So to that issue, Todd, I mean, do you think it would be better if we limited to say you've got to rent the whole house and eliminate the fact that you could just rent a room? I don't know, I mean.
I don't know, but if you rent out a room, that means you have somebody there overseeing the.
Right,
people
so
there.
which, yeah, I mean, which ways?
I would almost say that you should have the property owner there as opposed to giving them the whole house. But back to your earlier question or statement, Mary, did we know of anybody that has bought a house in town just for Airbnbs?
Yes.
Okay. Because I thought, to me, I would think, as an investment property, that should be long-term rental property. They would make, to me, make more money on.
They make more on Airbnbs. I think.
Yeah.
Because they rent them for a higher rate than one, than normal rent, monthly fee.
I mean, I wouldn't use it.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, housing in Bedford or in the town and rental properties at a premium. I mean, it's hard to find, but that does surprise me there. Was not aware of that.
Now, if you did what you were talking about and limited it and didn't let people rent or do the short-term rental without living in the home, what would we do with the people that are currently doing it the other way now?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's why I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
I didn't-
Because I would think there's probably a number of ones that are Airbnb that I've looked at that are renting the whole property without anybody being in it. I know the ones downtown are that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that they're not the owner occupant.
Yeah.
The owner's not there.
Yeah, because the
But-
ones I've rented, I've never had anybody there, and I probably would
Right,
rent
same
them if
here.
somebody was there.
Yeah, that same here.
Because I don't want to go in and have them, you know,
Did they totally leave at that time?
they never were, they didn't, it was the ones I've rented, they didn't live there, they just rented them.
But where were you?
Well,
Do this.
I've done it in New York, I've done it in Aruba, all over, you know, different states. I'm not.
Not small town like that.
There are some places like this, I'm trying to think, it's up in, like Massachusetts, somewhere like that. I was like a smaller place where they did. But it's, cause for me, if it was me renting, I wouldn't want to go into a smaller house and have the person in one of the bedrooms. And you're coming out of the bedroom and you got the person living there, coming out with you.
When you were looking online, Todd, did it look like there was people actually just renting bedrooms in Bedford, or were they renting the whole
I
house?
couldn't tell. Most of them, I was looking with Mary one day, and it looked like most of them were probably houses. I was showing them.
He was reporting his findings.
I was showing them to her. I wasn't looking with her, I was showing them to her.
The way things are now, the way they're set up now, is there any specific problems that we need to be addressing, or is it just that we are looking to make sure that there are, what are we doing? Because I'm thinking, to be honest, in Bedford, they're good. We don't have our hotels here, but Bedford still get a lot of visitors. So they helping us out right now. So if there's no problem that we need to change something, do something, then let's keep going the way we are and keep track of it and look at it. And if it becomes a problem, we can always come back to the drawing board. But right now, to be honest with you, some of these they're asset to that, because we don't have the hotel space, and the hotels that we have in the motels, and not talking about them, but they're surviving. People that's used to traveling, they're not gonna stay. And we're gonna lose people going to Roanoke or Lynchburg to stay when they come to Bedford to visit. So if they can find a place here that's working for them, I mean, that's just my opinion. I say, let's let it work, and let's keep an eye on it. If it's something we need to revisit, then let's do that. But right now, we sort of need these people.
And you're exactly right, Bob, in that they're getting people in the community, keeping them for a night or two. And they're visiting the restaurants, shops and all that, and staying, but at the same time, if we get too strict on this, then they're not gonna come, they're going somewhere else. To Lynchburg, Roanoke, or Bedford County. So, and I've heard the comment also, moving forward, when the two hotels open up here next year, and so forth, this will draw from them. I don't really think it will, is my thought, because there's a certain group of people that look for these. This is where they want to go. So regardless whether they're there or not, these certain groups of people, and my son's one of them, that's what they look for when they go on vacation. Todd, you said that's what?
I've done it, yes.
You've done that, so that's what certain groups look for. So I don't see it being I don't see it hurting the hotels that come here. So, but I'm like Bob, I mean, right now, I think what is there is good, and down the road, it's not in concrete. If we want to change something, we can go back and revisit, take another look at it, see what's not working.
Of course, there are, you know, a good many bed and breakfasts in town, so, you know, I mean, is it, have you had any feedback from any of them on, you know, the actual official bed and breakfast is kind of like, you're gonna stay there, you're gonna get a meal there, and, I mean, have you heard any feedback from them? I mean,
My contact has been with someone who spearheads the Bedford Lodging Group, and on behalf of those who are members of that group, they've said this is something that is needed in town, but other than making it legal, you know, to help their members, that's really been their big concern with that. So.
Could, and I don't know about the zoning, can a person who owns a bed and breakfast also use it as, also have one of the apps and have their rooms put on VRBO and Airbnb to rent?
I would presume.
I would think they
you
could.
wouldn't have to have two conditional use permits.
That's the reason I was asking, did you have?
Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. That's what
Could you
I
do the
thought.
same thing? Can they do that with the zoning that they have?
With bed and breakfast?
Yes.
District, I mean, designation as it is, yes.
Okay.
So that-
And that would be the way it would be now if we
You
changed it.
just, if you didn't change anything, you'd still have bed and breakfast use, and we fall back to that for those who would come in for the short-term rentals. And that's what Planning Commission had advised me back in 2022, when we had this conversation on our meetings, was just keep doing it this way, you know, we may make a change in the future, only because this is one of several uses that were proposed in the zoning ordinance just to catch it up to the times of what we've heard. It wasn't anything that had to be done to get to the point. Is it fixing something that's broken? I think in some ways it is, only with the additional regulation, but we still have bed and breakfast, which has just a strange definition.
Yeah, that was, my question was, would it
The
change,
box is a strange-
would a bed and breakfast have to change their zoning if they did have short-term rental within their?
They would still have to go through the process to establish the bed and breakfast use wherever they are.
But they can still let you rent it, but then they can rent it. Okay. I didn't know if they had to vote.
Should still process conditional use permit for any short-term or bed and breakfast.
Because I would assume most of them do something like that to help advertise.
Darryl, you got any comments, questions?
No, I think they've all been addressed. The last one was one that Stan was talking about. As far as the new hotels coming in, we'll be creating undue competition for those coming in, but kind of like Mr. Carson said, we have a need now that they are addressing. As we move forward, we can monitor and take any actions if needed. So, I'm comfortable with that.
And like I said, if it gets to be too many of them or something, then you got that conditional use permit where you can start saying, you can start putting it out there that say, hey, look, we're not gonna approve, we're not gonna approve these right now. You
Well,
know, or,
each one
you know.
comes before you do it, the planning
Right,
commission,
so
you can say,
that-
no, we have enough, but then I guess you get into the thing about what's the legal definition of enough, and would that be a challenge to action? So you could always change the ordinance, and at that point, just take it out.
Yeah.
And just put a limited number.
You could add make a provision for that, so that those that are there are still vested for their non-conforming.
We could address that when it happens.
Just kind of the consensus, I mean, to just go with the way the planning commission has written it with the conditional use process. Daryl, Bob, that, I mean, we're not, can we just get it, I mean, I know we're not taking action tonight, but I can get consensus so that we can make sure if there's any change, can we do that? Mr. Lockwood? I mean, if it's not an action item, can we get consensus that we're gonna bring these up? That
Absolutely, you can take a consensus and we staff, and you can take your nod. So obviously, it's not set in
It's
stone,
not right,
it's not
no,
change
yeah.
your mind, but.
because we're still gonna have a public hearing, well, we've had the public hearing, but we'll have an action item down the road after we go through this and take the official vote, but okay. Stacy, you okay?
I just got one question.
Uh-huh.
So in the end, with the old policy, I know that you have to go through the process of doing all that. With the new policy, what is the final, who makes the final decision? Does council itself or?
Council.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was still the same as it was before.
As long as it's not by right, that's administrative. As soon as it becomes a conditional use, it goes to planning commission and council.
Okay.
You have the final say, and you could also impose conditions that basically become take it or leave it.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good, so, all right, that's the biggest one, I think. Doug, you got any, we'll just kind of go around and.
Yeah, the only thing that I heard from some people were they were talking about the 25-foot setback, but I think I understood that, talking to some of the planning commission members, that so somebody can expand their house without having to buy property, so if it's less than 25 feet or more than 25 feet, it makes it difficult for some people to expand. It's not for certain areas, it's for everybody.
All right, so setbacks, that was a pretty big change. The rear setbacks right now are 50 feet in our residential zoning. And the planning commission recommended taking that to 25 feet, correct?
Yes.
Which, we've all heard the stories of the Governor's Hill. I think that's pretty much the issue. The place where it could be a potential issue is because unfortunately those people have 10-foot rear setbacks. So you're talking about a 35-foot there. So that was basically the thinking on the 25-foot is to allow additional building space in the back if needed, because I guess with our minimum lot size and a 50-foot rear setback, there really wasn't room to build additions or put auxiliary buildings, or is that?
So
That basically
the
what
minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. So this is, you've got two situations. You have existing properties that are experiencing hardship based on that setback, and their house is what it is, and they may not have had a lot size that was 10,000 square feet. So any lot being created going forward is 10,000 square feet, and would have whatever the rear setback would be. So two different situations, so remedy one to allow expansion or to allow new. So 10,000 is not that large,
Right.
but
So the front setback would still be the 50 feet, it's just, right, or 35, is it? 35.
This green sheet, I don't remember your board, so this is where we just try to consolidate what those changes look like in the setbacks for the district. So it's proposed to go from 35 in the front to 25, so it'll go closer to the road. No change to the 10-foot side, and the rear would be proposed to go from 50 to 25.
Like I said, any kind of nuisance, the only place it was, that I can imagine if it's still been an issue, like I said, is the Governor's Hill. So,
But Governor's Hill was our conditional use.
well,
But now the backside of that one, there's just one street that it would affect.
right, and that property behind it
It can be
was,
built by right, yeah.
well, it was zoned PRD, but it's still gonna be, it's gonna remain PRD even though
We
we.
haven't made changes that are recommended to the zoning map that would take PRD to R1.
Okay, so,
But R1 is permitted by right within the RD.
right, so the R1, if they decide to come in there by R1 and just build single-family homes, then they could require, that we wouldn't have an option
Right.
or the opportunity to adjust that setback there on those lots. So you'd have a 10-foot setback on the existing houses, you'd have a 25-foot setback on the other houses. Well, I mean, that's pretty close together, you know.
Yeah, but but the rest of the streets that way. The rest of the streets actually left. On some of some of the houses are 10 feet apart.
We're not talking about side.
Yeah, I know, no, I mean, they're 5-foot setbacks on the side of those
Yeah, so the
houses.
sides, I mean, they're always, I mean, that's.
And I'm trying to think if there are back-to-back houses there are some.
Of the back-to-back ones, but there's no 10-foot to 10-foot, or 10-foot.
Not that I've seen, I haven't looked at it, but.
There's some back to side,
Okay.
so there'd be 15 feet, it'll be 10 foot,
Yeah.
and then a 5-foot, yeah,
Where the road curves, it will.
yeah.
So, I guess, I mean, if you're okay, and I'm kinda okay with the 25-foot setback, like I said, I was just trying to see if there was a solution there, if, like in your subdivision ordinance, could you require a buffer, of say 15 feet before you started, you know, so now, if there, or have a minimum, I don't know how to word this, but, you know, have a minimum of still having 25 and 25, 50 feet between structures, kind of, or, so that if there's an existing area that, and I don't know if there are many out there in town, but we may find some others in town if some future development comes up and, you know, is there a way to require a buffer in the subdivision ordinance to ensure that there's at least 25 between parcels? And the problem is, you're talking about different property owners, so you're taking away, you're imposing a right on this guy, you know, that's more stringent, maybe. Mike, you got any thought, you understand what I'm trying?
I think it's possible.
You could draft that. I can see one way that it would be subject to challenge, but I've certainly seen things like that before, where depending on what's built up next to you, your setback and building options might change.
And I think the language currently says too, that actually the setbacks are average unless there is no development within a certain area. So I say that as preference to, you can draft something that says in cases where there are minimum rear setbacks less than 25, you could require a buffer that would
Right,
abate that situation.
so the
It's
guy
a
that.
little complicated, but it's doable.
Yeah, so the existing Governor Hill's got a 10-foot setback, so the lot that's gonna go up against him, now it's gotta have at least a minimum of 40 feet setback. Because to get the 50 that you're trying to say, I mean, you know, and then that's only a few lots in that subdivision that, I keep using that one as an example because that's the one that keeps getting brought up, you know, every time there's something out there. But,
Those folks have been pushed around a little bit in that whole subdivision.
well, I mean, it's gonna happen, that tract of land is gonna get developed at some
No,
point in
but
time.
I agree with you. I think there ought to be some sort of minimum between houses in the back. If we can do that.
Do you understand, does, what I'm trying to say, and I know I'm not saying it real well, but, is my intention coming across with what I'm,
Yes, but we can't do it for a specific neighborhood, though.
no, but if you can word it somewhere where there's gotta be
Yeah.
that minimum of,
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah.
Guarantee a matching or something.
yeah, no, I'm not, yeah, I'm just using that as
Oh, I
an
know.
example, but
Yeah.
yeah, I know, we can't just say that these are gonna be the setbacks on this.
Yes, correct. Yeah,
This tract of land, no.
Yeah, that's where my mind was.
It's actually standardizing two 25-foot rear setbacks.
Right, if we're okay with the 25-foot setbacks, I wanna at least just make sure.
Well, I remember that. Don't want to bring it. But I remember that developer, they did offer a buffer between the houses back
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
They did, but that was all part of the conditional use process, where we had an opportunity to say, you're gonna have to do that to get this, but if it's they go in and build single-family houses by right, we don't get that opportunity to impose that, you know, that kind of setbacks that we want.
And I agree with you, because I'm gonna tell you, them people over there, they'll be up here complaining about it if we don't try to address it somewhere somehow.
Well, it might, but like I'm saying, if a developer goes in there and wants to build single-family houses, they won't have that opportunity, because if we change it to the 25-foot setback, that's what he's gonna be able to have a 25-foot setback. Because we're not gonna impose any conditions on it, because it's by right. So that's where I'm trying to, because that's where I'm thinking that area may go, it may be R1, so how we can, so anyway, I don't know. Does anybody else got any thoughts on how, I mean, I think it's some technical language that we need y'all's help on how to, is that something y'all can, because that's technical stuff, and
Bart just volunteered, sir.
Bart volunteered to help figure that one out. That's what I'd like to hear.
Thank you, Bart.
Is everybody okay? I want to make sure everybody's okay with what I'm.
Still gotta use that planning certification for something.
Is everybody okay with what I'm
Yes.
proposing there?
Yeah, so you're basically saying you want a standard 50-foot.
Right, between the two.
Between two.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Nothing built there now.
And that's anywhere in town.
That's anywhere in town, yeah.
Everywhere.
So if you come up on another piece of tract of land that's got some people that's got less than 25-foot setbacks, then yeah, that adjacent parcel's gonna have to make sure there's 50 feet
Yeah.
between them.
So basically if somebody else gets another conditional use to build something similar, then anybody backing up to it without that permit.
Well, we drafted based on the by right use.
Yeah, exactly.
And where a by right development abuts another development that by right would otherwise have a 25 square linear foot setback, we would have to require additional permission. I can write it a lot easier than that.
Okay.
Go ahead, right, Bart.
Thanks
for volunteering.
Feel the distance between two.
And we tie
Right,
it
two
to
structures.
what can be built by
Right, right, so that, yes, correct. Okay. All
I
right.
know how to do that, I just can't say.
Todd, you got any more?
That was the only thing that I really.
Bruce, you got any?
We're good.
I'm good, yeah.
Darryl? Okay, I got a few more. You knew I'd have a few more. So explain to me, why we eliminated the PRD use. All right, so right now we have some zoning areas that are still zoned PRD. And I know you went to the mixed use development kind of thing. I'm just trying to wonder, does that open up or kind of feel like that forces a developer to try to put some commercial into maybe a residential?
So the new planned mixed district does not require commercial. It allows it at 30% if someone chose to do a mixed use development. It could be 100% residential at their discretion. And again, if they brought you something that had 30% commercial, and you thought it was not correct where that was, you would not approve that. So you can have that valve. But the thought in taking the planned residential development off the map and out of the text was to help those who, every time they came in to do anything, had to come in for a conditional use permit. If they were doing anything other than R1 uses or development standards. So if people were coming in for the duplexes anyway, it was just becoming more cumbersome to put people through a process if they weren't actually doing a full-blown development. And many people weren't coming in with the development plan, and again, it doesn't allow you to control it really if they were coming in with the by right. They weren't coming in to do conditional use permit for multifamily, then you weren't gonna see it anyway.
So basically it's an efficiency and kind of get rid of some regulatory burden on a developer that may want to do some
The
more.
intent was to
things.
streamline it and then create the new planned mixed district that would open up opportunities for different development standards that were more creative.
Okay. So did we remove any PRD areas from the map?
None that were already set as PRD, so your only two PRDs are Oakwood Villas and Governor's Hill. So their plan runs with their land.
Okay.
They're on the map.
Harmony is that or is that planned mix?
Harmony was B2.
No.
Yeah, so scratch your head. So we put that on the map as the new PMD, because they have a plan in place from 2012 that has been approved, and they're building into that. So they got the new PMD using the same old plan that was approved.
Was the Elks, behind the Elks on PRD?
It was.
So that's going from PRD to R1,
It
correct,
would.
on the new map?
Correct.
So that does eliminate that one area.
That would
correct?
eliminate, yes. Anyone could still come in and ask for any other district, R1, R2, R3, B2, plan mix. We can make a new, if the developer wanted to change the whole ordinance and create a whole new zoning district, they can take that to you as a text amendment, just like you do. It's just a matter of process and how it goes through the system.
Okay, I just wanted to get some clarification on that, because obviously,
And Harmony in particular, that's probably the single most efficient way to address it, so.
okay.
Planning Commission did a really good job.
Okay. All right, right. I don't know, these probably are more, the side ordinance. Was there, I mean, I know that's not part of the zoning, but.
It is.
Is it? Okay.
Absolutely.
So was there a lot of discussion on the sign ordinance or in-depth some changes on that or?
Yeah, there were, and those changes revolved around two things. One is to get it legal with a certain case
Right.
that mandated that we not regulate content, but context and where it could be and how it could be permitted. And the other thing in signage was making sure that it is Bedford scaled and appropriate for where those are, so that we would better regulate what we have and clarify some things, because it just ends up getting redundant about how we permit some things. Actually, one of the things that's less onerous is that we would not require, as it's written, we permit for a temporary banner, temporary sign. They just have to tell us they can take it down in 30 days and they're done with it. So that's one less layer of regulation for us. Basically, it was to streamline it. There was a lot of conversation about what's appropriate B1 and B2 and the height of signs on the bypass. It's currently 20 feet where a freestanding sign is permitted. The question was, is that appropriate all throughout town or only on a 50-mile-an-hour roadway?
Think about digital sign.
That too, and billboards. Now, that doesn't change anything, because billboards aren't allowed now anyway. But you could provide, I think, probably more stringent for digital signs to, the intent was to streamline it and just, and the other thing they did have a conversation about the non-conforming signs. If it's non-conforming, it needs to go away.
So so there were no changes to the digital sign piece,
I'd have
really?
to look back through and just say, we do mention digital signs in a couple of places, but I'm not sure that we pull it out separately.
Page
That is-
146.
Yeah, 146. Digital signs shall be permitted only on parcels that are B2 and adjacent to a public street or highway with a minimum posted speed of 45 miles per hour. And that's a minimum sign area, maximum sign area transfer.
What is the significance of the minimum 45-mile-an-hour speed?
Basically, it keeps them out of the B1 district.
And it's on, so that's 221, I think, is 45 mile an hour in the bypass.
Okay. I looked at a lot of research on the digital signs and there was, I found minimal evidence, literature on speed zones that the digital signs were better in than others. There was a lot of information about how quick the signs change from one particular set of information to another set of information. When you are looking at the signs that change every 6 to 8 seconds, those were the signs that created the biggest issues. Right. When you got into signs that change every 12 seconds or greater, the issue was minimized. So I'm not sure the significance of that as opposed to a speed zone. If it's a safety issue we're looking at, then let's look at how often the signs change the messages.
I can speak to that because that's historical. The 45 mile per hour thing, again, is basically just to say they're allowed in the 460 corridor and maybe higher speed corridors. There is the interval change, I think it's 8 seconds.
It's 4 or 8 that goes through the Department of Transportation.
Okay. But to that point about the safety factor, that can be adjusted.
The number of that.
But prior planning commissions were adamantly opposed, I think it's fair to say, to digital signs in the downtown area. But they were willing to kind of permit them as something of a pilot out on 460. And the 45-mile-an-hour reference, frankly, is arbitrary, it just keeps them down.
So the B2 is more significant than
Yes.
the
Speed limit.
Correct.
So it has to meet both of those metrics, or, you know, so it'd be to adjacent to a public street or a highway, with that being 45 mile an hour.
Because, I guess, the Burkesville used to be the 40, well, it was 45, and then it went to 30, then it went to the 35, and then the road died.
And the Burkesville area is kind of a specific area that's come to my attention. And I talked with Councilman Foreman a little bit about this. Back when I was writing tickets there, I could do 52-mile-an-hour speed tickets all day long. So it wasn't necessarily the speed limit, the posted speed limit, it's the speeds that people were going through.
It's really the zoning district within the interval of change from the side is a safety factor. But that's not what was captured in the original.
So it's only allowed in B2 right now, digital. So it won't be allowed in the new limited professional, or it won't be allowed in
The
the.
LP is kind of like your B1, it's still a transitional zone in the downtown area, not for traveling public who would be looking at a message
Right.
like that.
So those folks on Brooksville, could they look at some type of conditional use,
The variance, they
Variance.
have a variance option, they can always take it to the board of zoning appeals and make a case for hardship, using the three-prong test for that. And I have had to tell the church that no, they couldn't have a flashing sign on Brooksville Road.
We talked about that before, though. Remember we was talking about the signs and the height of the church. I believe it was a church then that wanted to put up one of these signs.
Yeah, they had another one also on 221, where it
Yeah.
got closer to the intersection of Longwood for the speed limit.
Well, I guess it kind of goes, I mean, I guess a lot of digital signs have gotten a lot better, but I mean, I know there was always been some opposition to the aesthetics of having flashing signs. And I know that's the opposition downtown, but, I don't know if there's something that maybe the planning commission can look and see and talk a little more and see if there's any way to tweak.
I must be speeding when I go through these signs. I won't get to read nothing. Well,
You got your eyes straight ahead, that's good, Bob.
That's good, but
You're on mission.
That is the intent of digital signs, is to get you to look at them, which means take your eyes off.
that's what all signage does.
That's right.
It's advertising.
I mean, I don't know, well, does anybody have any, do we think we need to study that issue a little more, maybe, and ask the planning, or does anybody, is it okay with kind of where we are right now, or?
I think it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about. If we see it is an issue, we can go back and address it. But now, right now, it's kind of up to the council here, right?
Do we have a lot of requests for?
No,
Yeah.
I think it's just been a couple.
just to.
You could kind of earmark that as a concern,
Okay.
move forward, and then.
Move, yeah.
Ask the
Yeah.
commission to revisit.
Okay.
Because again, none of this is in stone. We can go back and review it, take another look at it. And need to make changes and so be it.
All right, so,
I
go
can go
ahead.
down the sign, get one.
Yeah, sir.
On the, like a Wayfair sign, so how did that fall into place?
So those generally become off-premise signs and are regulated, and under that, has to have the owner's permission and landscaping around it, but it does not open the door to putting a billboard as an off-premise sign. So for us, I think we've been trying to figure out where we fit wayfinding signage in on our property that would be equitable for the businesses that would need to be on that wayfinding sign.
So if a business downtown said they wanted to put their name on, like a sign coming onto Main Street right there off of 460.
So, the way that that can be done is through the VDOT wayfinding program, and I do have a company that's been asking for years years for us to make that possible, because in order for them to be on a loop sign on 460, there has to be direct signage at every turn to that business, which would be off-premise wayfinding signs that we don't have a provision for. But they have to have it all the way to the business in the middle of town from 460 to be on the loop signs.
And then the last one, Mary and I talked about this, and I didn't know, but just wanted to bring it up to see if anybody else had any thoughts about it. So for your sign ordinance, you've got a sign budget based on, I guess, the square footage of your building and that kind of stuff. And so you've got a limit of how big your signs can be and that kind of stuff. One of the question that was asked to me is, right now, window stenciling, door stenciling counts against that budget. So you've seen some of that in downtown recently, a couple places. So I didn't know if that was a discussion at the planning commission about stenciling. I mean, some of that stuff can be very attractive. Some of it can be very overwhelming. So I think there should be some restrictions around it, but I'm not sure, this is my take, I'm not sure that should limit maybe the signage as much. I didn't know if there could be some further in-depth discussion about stenciling on windows, or, you know, I don't know how much y'all talked about that.
No, because it didn't come up as an issue, because anything visible from the public right of way, advertising what the business is doing is a sign. And so that gets calculated within there, whether it's stenciled, whether it's projecting, whether it's on a door, whether it's over the door, and it's this big.
Right.
It just depends, but it's still counted in the sign area allocation, so we get X amount of space based on the frontage, building frontage. And B1, that is limiting. It's 1.5 pretty much everywhere else. Which again, talk about what is the scale of Bedford.
Right.
So that was the only conversation we had related.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, I don't want them to be, you know, block the whole window of a downtown business or anything like that, but I wonder if there's some way to give them a little bit more room in their budget, or have it as an extra calculation. I don't know. I mean, if there's, Mike, have you ever seen any kind of breakout of that anywhere? Or, I mean, you're gonna see more, I think it's gonna become a little more prevalent, that stenciling and stuff on windows and stuff.
I haven't, but you can write whatever you want. The only caution I would give you is that at some point, it's verbally still.
To calculate it.
Right, calculate it,
Right.
draft a permit.
Right. So I'm not suggesting we make any changes with what you have got right now. Maybe I would just like for you to kind of research that a little bit more, if you don't mind, maybe just see if there's an option there to get someone a little more signage space.
And I absolutely agree. We absolutely need to be business friendly. My only concern, and again, back to the point of the sign case we want to avoid is content.
You're right.
And so where do we draw a line in a cigarette sign in a convenience store?
Well, that's what I just couldn't.
And a fancy sign that says blank on blank. You know.
Yeah, because there's some convenience stores that cover their whole windows up in town. And that's what you want to avoid is, you know, because if you're talking about, I'm thinking of crime prevention, because the bigger the sign, the less you can see into the business, and the more likely somebody's going to probably commit a crime.
I mean, they may be in violation of our current sign orders, so, I mean.
They
you know,
probably are.
Yeah, I'm.
But I'm talking
saying
about
that-
if you add to what you can put onto the window.
Right.
It may start blocking the window where people can see in, because seeing in makes people safer.
Well, we can limit the percentage, the percentage of the sign, the percentage of the window, you can only have such.
That's the way most do, is percentage of window coverage.
Right. Anyway, I'm not gonna.
That's not the way it's written now, though, right?
I know we have a new valve here for measuring signage on a corner, but no, we do not call out specifically, again, coverage and percentage of the window, because it's just not something that I've ever tried to split that hair on.
Okay.
It's just, tell me what you're advertising.
Right.
sure that it's your calculation is.
Yeah, well.
But even if we change that, who would regulate that? I mean, so you would have to go and look at these.
In the
ones
permit
and just-
process, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But, I mean, some of these things, cause some of these ones is right, they just get covered everywhere.
Yeah.
But you know, I think these are people, if you go to and say, look, you gotta take some of that stuff down. You know, you gotta take it down. You can't see out of there. It should be something, some kind of way that it's already against some sort of rule to cover your window. But if it's not, then, I mean, we have to have people, we do make all these changes, but we need to regulate them. We need to have people that's on point. And that's my question, is who make these changes, then who's gonna regulate? Who's gonna, that's not so busy, they have time to go and say, look, you gotta take some of this stuff down. And me personally, I guess a letter would do it. But me, you know me, I like talking to people face to face.
That's always our first line.
You know, but I mean, yes, but I mean, that was my question, not for any reason other than who's gonna have the time to do that. Because we got a busy staff. Okay. And that's the reason I'm asking. So if we make these changes, we gotta make sure these people that hear about these changes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Fair enough.
Who would actually do the face-to-face? You, Gary? or-
Oh, Gary.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
He's very smooth.
Yeah, he's used to it.
And usually his enforcement is generally the flags, the sail, it's flapping things in the wind, that he's generally, and now we're finding more, moving, flashing, really bright neon things, and we're trying to keep a handle on that so that it doesn't get beyond, so the neighbors don't go, well, you got it, why can't I? Just to be equitable.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if we were to change this, and we're running out of time here, but if we were to change to a percentage of coverage, it just gets more complicated for the company, the sign company coming in and going, well, I think the window's 25 by 25, we're gonna cover a 4 by 4 area of it, but it's just like, just tell me how big your sign is. And yes, it meets your minimum or, your maximum or it doesn't. We'll work with it every way we can, especially if it's on a corner lot. We will stretch that every way we can and still be fair and not,
All right.
something that someone would complain about.
This, you might have covered this, I just missed it, but if a local business owner wants to support the SPCA's annual banquet, whatever, and they're gonna have to sign up for a temporary, does that count against that space?
Well, it depends. First thing, is it in the right of way? Is it a sight distance hazard of that? And generally it doesn't count against them because we wouldn't regulate that as a temporary permit. If they're just doing something nice for somebody for a weekend, yard sales usually fall into that. We don't really go after them for things like that unless it's just something that continues or is drawing attention to that business. We just try to be neighborhood things so we know we're temporary. They're going to just take care of themselves.
It's kind of like campaign signs, I guess.
What are those?
Yeah.
That-
All right, and my last one, promise. Subdivision ordinance, we, got some new plans for new subdivisions and stuff, and when there's a conditional use permit, we've kind of historically here lately required 2 entrances and exits for public safety purposes. So I didn't know if there was any discussion, or if we should have any discussion about making that a little more, making that a part of the subdivision ordinance. If you got a subdivision of X number of lots, you're gonna need to have 2, access points from a public safety standpoint. I mean, that's a difficult one to kind of figure out because, what is that number 1? Obviously if you got a 8-lot subdivision, you're not gonna make them 2 entrance and exits, but there's also historically been a lot of subdivisions that are just one street. And you got houses going down both sides of this one street, that's gonna, not have it as a second ingress and egress, but didn't know if there's any discussion or any desire to look into that a little more as part of the, and it doesn't have to be in this zoning text amendment, but.
Well, I think now is the time to have that conversation. So
Okay.
Lockerbie has been working to draft your subdivision standards and your design standards, which are the next chapters after the zoning ordinance that make up the land development regulations. So Actually, those are next on your plate.
We
Right.
actually have to have a conversation about some stuff.
Yes. Oh, yeah, well, there's lots of stuff that's not.
I mean, is that something we want as a policy kind of decision? That we, would- if a subdivision gets to be certain size, I mean, I knew VDOT, like a lot of the county subdivisions, they'll make you have, at least have the ability to connect to the next subdivision.
Stuff out to develop.
Stuff, right.
parcels, yes.
Now, do we require that right now?
Generally, developers just do that because they know that's an expectation. EDOT used to call it multiple connections in multiple directions.
Right.
For that. So it's something we always would like to see.
But that still doesn't go, that's to the future, that doesn't go to the question of today,
It's
of
not
how
really
big a
the one.
subdivision,
Right.
yeah.
So, I mean, if we gonna move forward on subdivision, I think that's something that we do need to look into and try to put into the ordinance of what we can or not for the public safety standpoint, because it's hard to get fire trucks or police cars in one entrance thing when you're completely blocked off.
Right.
And you got cars on the side of the street, et cetera, so it's something we do need to, I think we need to look into for the future, for this ordinance.
And, you know, I mean, I know this is kind of new, but, I mean, you know, we're starting to see fairly large subdivisions being proposed and wherever they can find a piece of land in town, so, you know, so, that's why it's probably never been a concern and, you know, a long time, because there hasn't been that many new subdivisions being developed.
And you saw that on Eastern Crossing that came through where there was actually a lot of pushback on that second, what we considered a second entrance. It wasn't really a second entrance, it was just the flow through of the community development that, you know, no one was gonna put 30 houses on something with one way and one way out.
Right, so, I mean, that's the other piece, is the traffic flow in addition to the public safety aspect of it, so,
And you can look at the public safety standpoint, so I was using fire trucks for a sample, so if you have a hydrant at the end of the subdivision, going into the subdivision, you lay 1,000-foot hose into that, if someone has to get out, you try to get back in there, there's no way you can, because the hose is charged, and you can't get by.
so,
I think
So-
this is something that's going to have to really consider. Everybody making a good point. And not only that, it's something we're going to have to put higher on the list. Like you said, a lot of people go to subdivisions. Where my son lives in South Carolina, there's only one, all of the streets, it's a big circle. You go there, but they park on both sides. There's no included, but then you have the others that you go from one subdivision to the other one.
right.
So, I mean, I think it's something we need to discuss, we need to look at and take very seriously, because you've made a good point. Suppose something happens, you have to get that fire truck, you block the whole street. Nothing's going in and nothing.
Or they might not even be able to get in if
That's what I'm
that
saying,
one
if
street
you
is
got cars
blocked.
on both sides of the street, so I mean, this is something we need to take. It's not something we need to rush and make a decision, it's something we need to talk about.
And I totally agree in that, it's different now than what it was years ago. I think of one street, okay, if we implemented that now to requiring 2 entrances, North Hills probably never have been developed. Boone Drive, Western Hills, Oakwood Village. So, you know, you've got to agree, look at different things, how wide the streets are, how they intertwine. And it's not always going to be a connecting subdivision to go to phase 1, phase 2, and so forth. But no, I totally agree. We can need to look at that.
Well, even if it's not 2 actual, roads in and out, if that's not feasible, is it feasible to then require, like we were talking about that Governor said that one time, where you've got an emergency access,
Yes.
you know, that's blocked off, that, hey, okay, but if they need to, they can ride that truck down the grassy, you know.
We do require that now, but that's actually a matter of building code. Certain number of units triggers that fire access
Okay.
section of building code, and that's what I generally give to developers, at a very minimum, this is what you have to do.
Right.
But it's not full-time access. It's-
Right.
That's needed.
All right, think if we just look at this, since you're working on the subdivision ordinance part, maybe we look at, to see what we can maybe kind of, if there's a way to kind of tighten that up, so maybe. Anything else? Todd, Bruce? Everybody get all their questions answered?
Good discussion.
Did you feel like y'all got where we are on the, I guess really it's kind of we're okay with the Airbnb stuff from a consensus. We're gonna work on the setback stuff, and the rest, I think we're maybe just gonna study, maybe let the planning commission talk a little bit more, maybe.
Signage. So for the short-term rentals, you are okay to proceed as written?
That was pretty much the consensus, correct? Looking around.
It's shown in all the districts where it was conditional versus by right.
And then the 25-foot setbacks, we're gonna try to figure a way to kind of mitigate that if it's less than 50 feet between structures. Is that consensus, everybody? Was that the only two that really we were gonna propose some changes, and the rest maybe we'll just study some more of that?
That's fine.
Right? Good? All right, so we'll adjourn the work session. Be back here in a few minutes, start the regular meeting.